I wasn't going to leave that morning, but when Seth slammed the door as if he wanted to erase me from his life, I just disappeared. Moving in with my brother was supposed to be temporary, but everything changed when his neighbor Eli opened the door to the apartment, half drunk, confused, and strangely familiar. I didn't know then that this chance encounter would change everything. I didn't plan on leaving that morning, but when Seth slammed the door with the kind of finality that said you're nothing to me, I didn't even grab a coat. I just stared at the space where he used to stand and realized for the first time in 6 years that I wasn't welcome in my own life anymore. It took me 10 minutes to throw my life into a duffel bag, toothbrush, chargers, the hoodie that still smelled like autumn. I left the sweater he always stole, not out of sentiment, but because I didn't want to carry his memory around like unpaid rent. I walked to the train with fingers numb from more than cold. The city looked different from this angle. It always does when you're not heading home. Eric picked up on the second ring. "Yeah, of course," he said. "Crash at mine. I'm in Dallas for work. Keys are still under the pot." It wasn't until I stood outside his apartment, fingers curled around the spare key, that I realized how pathetic I probably looked, like a cliche of heartbreak. Younger brother, late 20s, mid-breakdown, hoping the couch isn't covered in someone else's regrets. But it wasn't Eric's couch that threw me. It was everything else. The second I stepped inside, I knew someone else lived here now. There were 2 mugs in the sink, a dented bottle of whiskey on the counter, and a beat-up leather jacket draped over a chair like it belonged. None of that was my brother. Eric wore pressed shirts and silence like armor. This space had music in the walls and a smell I couldn't place. Cedar, maybe, and something warmer. A name surfaced from memory. Elijah. I'd met him once, maybe twice. Quiet guy, sunglasses even in shade. Talked motorcycles with our dad and avoided eye contact like it burned. I dropped my bag by the door and made tea mostly out of habit. I didn't want to start cleaning up someone else's space or risk sitting where I didn't belong. So I curled into a corner of the couch and put on the kind of music that makes you feel okay about not being okay. That's when the front door slammed. Hard. I froze. Footsteps thudded unevenly across the floor, followed by a voice. Low, slurred. "Where the hell are my keys?" I paused my music just in time to see a man stumble into view. Tousled hair, flushed face, keys dangling from his fingers like they'd betrayed him. Then his eyes locked on me. "What the? Who the hell are you?" I dropped the mug and sat up straighter, throat dry. "Eric's brother," I said quickly. "He said I could stay while he's out of town." The man blinked. Then he laughed, the sound sharp and sudden, like surprise tripping over exhaustion. "No one tells me anything," he muttered. "I'm Elijah." I nodded. "Nick." He stared a second longer before stumbling toward the kitchen. I stayed still, unsure if I was supposed to leave, fight, or pretend I was invisible. He returned with water, then dropped onto the opposite end of the couch without warning. His shoulder barely missed mine. He took a long sip, then said, "You're not gonna rob me, right?" "No promises." He laughed again, softer this time, and leaned his head back. "You got that my world just burned down look." I didn't answer. He gestured vaguely toward my bag. "So what happened?" "Let me guess. Boyfriend turned out to be a walking trash fire?" I blinked. "How'd you—" "Please." He waved a hand. "You've got heartbreak written all over you. That, and I overheard Eric on the phone a while back. Something about, he's finally done with that guy." That hurt more than I expected. "Sorry," Elijah said quickly. "That was too much. I'm not usually—" He paused, then smirked. "Actually, I am usually this much." I tried not to smile. "It was a bad breakup." He nodded slowly. "He cheat?" "Worse. He stopped caring." Elijah tilted his head. "Ouch." Silence fell. Not awkward, just thick. The kind that fills in when people start wondering if they said too much. He leaned forward suddenly, elbows on knees. "You ever feel like people love the idea of you, but not the version that actually breathes?" I looked at him. That was too close to what Seth had made me feel for too long. "Yeah," I said. He looked sideways at me. "Then maybe it's a good thing you left." I shrugged. Didn't feel like a choice. He nodded. It never does. Until later, when it's too late to say thank you to the version of yourself that finally ran. For a moment, he didn't look drunk. Just tired. Real. Then he yawned, hard, and slumped back again. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. Eric didn't tell me his brother was a heartbreak case. He didn't tell me his roommate drinks whiskey like it's Gatorade. Touché. He reached for the blanket I'd folded and tossed it over both of us, without asking. I thought about moving, but I didn't. Maybe I needed warmth more than distance. His voice was quieter now. You staying long? Just a few days. He didn't answer, just closed his eyes and let out a breath. But I saw the way his fingers curled near mine, not touching, just close. I wasn't sure what to do with that, or with the way my chest ached in a different way now. Not from the past, but from something else. Something shifting. And I couldn't help wondering if I'd just stumbled into someone else's life, or the beginning of something I didn't see coming. I woke up to the sound of dishes clattering and someone cursing under their breath. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Then the smell of burnt eggs hit me like a warning shot. I sat up on the couch. Elijah was in the kitchen, barefoot, waving a towel at a smoking pan. Morning, I said, voice still rough from sleep. He froze, then turned around like a kid caught sneaking out. I was trying to make eggs. Obviously failed. I stood and stretched. Smells like you made a mistake. He cracked a smile. I figured coffee might make up for last night. He poured me a mug like it was some kind of peace treaty. We sat at the counter. He picked at toast while I tried to ignore how natural this all felt, like we'd done it before. Like this wasn't the first time someone made me coffee just to make sure I stayed. You okay? He asked. I'm here, I said, which is something. He nodded. You didn't talk much last night. You kind of did that for both of us. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Elijah, I said slowly, why were you really that drunk? His jaw tightened. Why does anyone get that drunk? Because they're trying to forget something. He looked down at his hands. Or someone. We didn't say more after that. We didn't have to. That night, he didn't disappear into his room. He hovered, pacing, fiddling with the speaker, playing a playlist I didn't recognize. We ended up watching a movie without really watching it. He sat close again. Not too close, but close enough to make my skin hyper-aware. Halfway through, his head dropped to my shoulder. I tensed. He didn't move. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't nothing either. It felt like trust. Quiet, shaky, undeserved trust. I didn't move until the credits rolled. You drooled, I said, half joking. He didn't even open his eyes. Only emotionally. Next morning, things didn't reset. They shifted. We started cooking together. First, just out of necessity, then out of habit, then because it gave us something to do that didn't require talking about what we weren't ready to say. By the fourth night, we moved around the kitchen like we'd choreographed it. Garlic? He asked, holding up a clove. Not unless you want to poison me. He blinked. Noted. We sat on the floor with takeout the next night. It was raining outside. Soft, steady, the kind that hums against the windows like a warning or a lullaby. I didn't know which. Elijah picked at his food. Are you gay? It landed sharp, even though his tone wasn't. I blinked. That's kind of direct. You were dating a guy. I paused. It's not something I talk about a lot. Why not? Because people treat it like a headline instead of a detail. He nodded slowly. Makes sense. He didn't ask anything else. He just sat there, eating quietly, as if the question had never been about judgment, just curiosity. A door he offered but didn't push open. That night I made tea and sat on the couch again. He joined me holding his own mug, even though I was pretty sure he hated tea. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, you ever wish you could pause everything? I looked over. He was watching the steam rise like it had answers. Yeah, I said, when it feels like the world's moving faster than you can breathe. He turned slightly. This feels like that pause. I didn't know how to respond. My chest tightened in a way I wasn't used to. I nodded barely. Then his leg brushed mine, just lightly. His phone buzzed. The moment shattered. He grabbed it fast like it might explode. Sorry, he said, standing. I should take this. He didn't come back. I stayed up too long that night. The apartment was too quiet. The tea turned cold. The space between us, which had just started to feel familiar, stretched wide again. The next few days were off. He was in and out, never still. No more shared breakfasts, no more shoulder brushes. He'd ghosted, just without leaving the building. I found myself watching the door, waiting for his footsteps, memorizing the rhythm of his absence. I didn't ask why. I didn't have to. The kiss hadn't happened, but it almost had. That was worse. By day 4, I was packed, bag by the door, keys in hand. I didn't want to go, but I didn't know how to stay. That's when he walked in, rain-soaked, hoodie clinging to his frame. No jokes, no sarcasm, just him. He saw the bag, froze. "You're leaving," he said flatly. I didn't answer. "Because of me?" I didn't look at him. "Elijah," I said finally, "was it just the moment? Just the quiet? The almost?" He exhaled. "No." He dropped the bag he'd been carrying, took 2 steps toward me. "I'm messed up," he said. "I've been hiding behind noise and sarcasm because it's safer than wanting something I'm not sure I deserve." I didn't speak. He stepped closer. "I almost kissed you because I wanted to know what it would feel like to stop pretending." He paused. "And I didn't, because I was afraid it would feel real." The room felt too small, too loud. Then quietly he asked, "Can I stay in this moment with you?" "Just this one?" I let the duffel drop. "Yeah." His shoulders dropped, like he'd been holding tension too long. We didn't kiss, we didn't need to. Not yet. But that night when we sat on the couch again, no movie, no tea, our hands found each other. Not gripping, not grabbing, just resting, still, present. And somehow, that said more than anything else could. We didn't talk about the almost. After that night on the couch, everything slowed. Not in a peaceful way, but in the way people move when they were afraid to break something fragile. Our hands didn't find each other again. Not yet, but our eyes did. And they said more than we were ready to admit. He started waking up earlier, made toast without offering me any, played music in his room instead of the kitchen, like distance would protect him from something he didn't have a name for. I let it happen, until the 3rd night. I was halfway through doing dishes when he came home, soaked to the bone. Not from rain, from whatever storm he'd stepped into emotionally. He didn't say hello, just tossed his keys down and went straight to the whiskey bottle he kept too visible. "You okay?" I asked. He poured a glass, didn't answer. "Elijah." He stared into the sink like it offended him. "I thought going out would help." "Did it?" "No." He drained the glass like it owed him something, then sat on the couch without looking at me. I dried my hands, waited. When I finally sat down beside him, he didn't move away, but he didn't lean in either. "Talk to me." He took a breath. "You ever want something you shouldn't?" "All the time." "I'm serious." "So am I." He turned finally and his voice dropped. "I think I want you, and I don't know what to do with that." I froze. "Elijah, I know you're Eric's brother. I know this is messy, but when I'm not near you, I feel like I'm forgetting how to breathe." I didn't answer, because my throat had closed up. He leaned closer, slowly, carefully, not demanding. "Tell me to stop." I didn't, so he kissed me. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't sweet either. It was the kind of kiss that lives in the space between longing and fear. The kind that asks a question neither of you is ready to answer. Then he pulled back. And everything changed. He saw it in my face. The hesitation, the confusion, the fear that he wasn't just a mistake but a repeating pattern. He stepped away like I'd slapped him. "I shouldn't have done that." "You didn't?" "I crossed a line," he said quickly. "God, I always do this." I stood up. "Elijah, I can't." He shook his head and stepped back like the floor was falling out beneath him. "I don't know what I'm doing." "Neither do I." That stopped him. "I don't have some neat answer for this. For you. But don't run from it like it didn't happen." He looked at me like I just dared him to be human. Then he turned and left the room. His door shut with a quiet finality. That night I didn't sleep. Not because of the kiss, but because of the silence afterward. A silence that said, "You don't belong here anymore." The next morning he was gone. Again. No note, no mug, no sign he'd even been in the apartment. And that became the new pattern. He was always somewhere else, even when he wasn't. By day 3, I was unraveling. Not angry, just done. I packed slowly, not because I had too much stuff, but because leaving meant letting go of a version of myself I only just started to like. I zipped the duffel and left it by the door. Then I stood there, waiting for something I didn't think would come. But it did. The lock clicked. I turned. Elijah walked in, holding a plastic bag and regret in his eyes. He saw the bag. His face changed. "You're leaving." I was. Because of me. I didn't respond. He set the bag down like it weighed more than it should have, then leaned against the counter like it was the only thing holding him up. I've been trying not to feel anything for weeks, but then you showed up and made it impossible. I crossed my arms. Then why pull away every time it got real? Because I've been pretending for so long that I don't know how to stop. Then don't. He looked up. "You think I don't want this?" I asked. "I do, but I'm tired of being someone's regret." He stepped closer, not rushing, just enough to close the distance that had been growing since the kiss. "I kissed you because I wanted to know what it felt like to be honest for once." I swallowed hard. "It scared me," he said. "Still does." "But you meant it." "Yes." I searched his face for doubt. There wasn't any. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Then don't run this time." He nodded slow. We didn't hug. We didn't kiss again. But he picked up my duffel, set it back against the wall and said, "Stay." So I did. But that didn't fix everything. That night we barely spoke. Not out of discomfort, out of emotional exhaustion. We sat on opposite sides of the couch again, but it felt different, like we were giving each other room to breathe. He reached for the remote, then stopped. Instead he said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not walking away before I figured out how to stay." I didn't reply, because maybe that was the start of something real. We didn't define anything after that night. No long talks, no confessions, no second kiss. Just smaller things, like Elijah remembering how I took my coffee, or me learning which part of the couch he claimed as his when he was tired. We let the closeness come back in sideways. Some nights he'd sit beside me with his head resting, just close enough. Some mornings I'd find a second mug already poured, waiting. It wasn't romance, not yet, but it was something neither of us had words for. And somehow, that was enough. Until Eric came home. I was slicing an avocado, too focused on not losing a finger, when the lock turned. "Why does it smell like actual food in here?" Eric's voice filled the apartment like a challenge. I froze, then stepped into the hallway. "Welcome back." He blinked. "You're still here?" "Yeah." He wheeled his suitcase inside, eyeing the kitchen. "And the place isn't on fire. I'm shocked." "Nice to see you too." Before either of us could say more, the door opened again. Elijah walked in, hoodie damp from rain, holding 2 coffees. The second he saw Eric, he froze. Eric's gaze flicked from him, to the 2 mugs, to me. Then he squinted. Wait a second." "Don't," I said quickly. Elijah set the drinks down without a word. Eric crossed his arms. "Is there something you two want to tell me? Or should I piece this together like some kind of roommate soap opera?" I looked at Elijah. He looked at me. Neither of us spoke. Eric raised an eyebrow. "This is about you two, isn't it?" "It's new," Elijah said, "and we didn't plan it." Eric turned to him. "You didn't plan to kiss my brother?" Elijah winced. "Nope, that happened." I stepped forward. "Eric," he held up a hand. "Look, I don't need the details. Please. But if you're screwing around just because you're bored or broken—" "I'm not," Elijah cut in. "I didn't mean to fall for him, but I did." That shut Eric up. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then Eric sighed. "If you hurt him, I'll kill you." "I know," Eric looked at me. "And you? You're not just crashing anymore?" "No." He nodded once. "Fine, just No public displays of emotion near the blender. I need to use that thing again. He grabbed his suitcase and disappeared down the hall. I looked at Elijah. He let out a breath and muttered, I thought that would go worse. That night, we didn't sit on opposite ends of the couch. He pulled me into his side like it was natural, and I didn't resist. My head found his shoulder, and his arm wrapped loosely around me. Neither of us said anything. We didn't have to. In the morning, I woke up in his bed, not because we'd planned it, not because anything changed overnight, but because I'd fallen asleep there, and he hadn't moved. His arm stayed around me. I didn't want to leave. We made breakfast in silence. Eric hovered like a suspicious cat, occasionally peeking into the kitchen and then retreating with a sigh. Eventually, he gave up and put in headphones. Later that afternoon, Elijah asked if I wanted to walk with him. No reason, no destination, just fresh air. We wandered through the park nearby, crunching leaves underfoot. He talked about a book he never finished. I told him about a song that used to make me cry, but didn't anymore. He listened, really listened. That was new. We didn't hold hands, but his elbow brushed mine more than once, and I didn't think it was an accident. When we got back, he made tea, for both of us, even though he still hated it. We sat on the couch again, the TV humming quietly. My eyes started to close. He shifted beside me, then paused. I glanced over. His hand moved toward mine. Not quick, not dramatic, just a quiet reach. This time I didn't hesitate. I met his hand halfway. There was no timeline, no moment we both pointed to and said, this is when it started, because it hadn't started with a kiss. It had started long before that, with silence, with burned eggs, with not turning away when everything else told us to. But the world outside didn't wait for us to catch up. Eric went back to work. Elijah picked up a few extra shifts. I started applying for jobs in the city. Small things at first, just enough to feel like I was building something of my own. Elijah would come home late some nights, tired, quiet. He never said much, but when he walked through the door, his eyes always found mine first. That was enough, at least for a while. One night I found him sitting on the balcony, just sitting, no phone, no drink. The air was cold, but he didn't move. I sat beside him, waited. He spoke without looking at me. You know what scares me? No. This, he said. Feeling like I'm allowed to want something, and not having to break it first just to prove I don't need it. He looked at me then. I don't want to break this. You're not, I said. We're still here. He nodded slowly. I've never let anyone this close without expecting them to run first. I leaned back. Then maybe stop expecting it. He didn't answer, but his hand reached for mine. That was the answer. A few days later, I got an offer for a part-time position at a local nonprofit. Eric raised an eyebrow when I told him over breakfast. So you're staying, he said. Not a question, just a conclusion. I think I already did, he smirked. You always had a way of making temporary things stick. That afternoon, Elijah met me outside the office. No reason, just to walk me home. He didn't say congratulations. He just walked beside me like he'd always been there. At a stoplight, he glanced sideways. I never told you why I really freaked out after the kiss. I looked at him. You don't have to. I do, he said, because you deserve to know it wasn't about you. I waited. My last thing, before you, it ended bad. Not loud, not dramatic, just slowly. I stopped being seen, stopped asking for what I wanted because I knew I wouldn't get it. He shrugged. So when I started wanting something again, it scared the hell out of me. I took a breath. You're not invisible here. He nodded once. I know. That night we cooked together like always. But this time there was no unspoken tension, no eyes darting away when they met. Just rhythm, comfort, a quiet kind of certainty. We ate on the floor again, like we used to, music low, nothing urgent. And when he reached for my hand, I didn't flinch. Later, curled up on the couch, he looked at me and said, You still have the key Eric left for you? I nodded. Keep it, he said. I looked at him. You sure? You're not crashing anymore, he said. You're part of the place now. There wasn't a dramatic pause, no deep stare, just a simple offer, and it was enough. Weeks passed. We settled. Not in a stagnant way. In the way you do when you realize life doesn't need to be a storm to mean something. I started leaving my bag unpacked. Elijah started sleeping on my side of the bed more than his own. One morning as I poured coffee, he came up behind me and mumbled, "This isn't temporary anymore, is it?" "No," I said. "It's not." He nodded. "Good." He never asked for a label. Neither did I. What we had didn't need one. Not when it already felt more honest than anything that came before. And on the days when the world crept in too loud, when I second-guessed myself, or Elijah slipped back into old doubts, we gave each other space to breathe. Not everything was perfect, but it was real, and that made it ours.